Body. The Monday, November 16th, 2020 meeting of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board is now up and running. I'm Keith Rovell, your presiding officer, and we are going to call the meeting to order right now at 10 a.m. I would like to remind everybody, keep your mic muted unless you wish to speak. Say your name each time before speaking, and please stay on camera at all times during the meeting unless the presiding officer, that would be me, calls a recess. Okay, at this time, we'll call on Delia Luna to conduct the roll call and the certification of quorum.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Jeffrey Alford.
Here.
Jude. Chuck Snyder. Sorry.
Present.
Kyle McNew.
Present.
Michael Manser.
Present.
Robert Richmond is absent. Ricky Wyatt.
Present.
Chris Lipton. Roger Bowles.
Present.
And presiding officer Keith Rovell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Delia.
You're welcome.
All right, now we will move ahead to the approval of the minutes from our meeting of October 1st of this year. Members, you've got the proposed minutes in your packet. At this time, do we have any discussion about the minutes? All right. If not, then I would ask someone to please state your name and make a motion to accept and approve the minutes.
Kyle McNew makes a motion that we approve the minutes as posted and written.
All right, and may we have someone state their name and give us a second.
Rick Wyatt, and I second.
Okay. Once again, is there any discussion on the minutes? Very good. All right, then. At this time, we would like to go ahead and do a roll call for a vote on the minutes, please.
Jeffrey Alford.
Aye.
Jude Chuck Snyder.
Aye.
Kyle McNew.
Aye.
Michael Manser.
Aye.
Ricky Wyatt.
Aye.
Chris Litfin. Roger Bowles.
Aye. Aye.
And presiding officer Keith Rovell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Delia. At this time, we're going to move to the public comment section of our meeting. Now, a reminder that anyone wishing to address the board must have submitted an email by following the public comment instructions located on the website. That had to be done by 12 p.m. November 13th. Basically, we did receive 2 public comments. They were sent to all the board beforehand. I assume you all got those. We will not read those publicly. We do have one person who wishes to speak under public comments, Joel Morris. And Mr. Morris, at this time, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak, and Delia will keep time. Now, I do have to remind everybody, we are not allowed to ask questions. We may respond only in the form of clarifying questions. So at this time, we'll have Mr. Morris speak. Is he here?
Presiding Officer Rovell, I do not see. We have been looking for Mr. Morris. He's not currently online. And Mary Winston TDLR, and we've been back channeling with our webmaster. He's not online.
All right, then. Well, at this point, then I guess we will go ahead and move on to our staff reports. Very good. So starting out with Chloe Whalen, the licensing manager, will have the report from the licensing division.
Good morning, Chairman and Presiding Officer, Mr. Rovell.
Good morning.
Chloe Whalen, licensing. manager for this program. Just some personnel updates for COVID for the licensing division. We made some adjustments that we can for us to continue working and making sure we process applications, but just at home. Our IT department has been very helpful and excellent in getting us ready and up and making sure that we were able to continue working from home. Our processing of applications for renewals and new applications. We've also had continuous staff from other areas that have been assisting our licensing department, from our education department and to our RPM department. And excuse me for those acronyms, because it's not coming to my mind right now. We've also had our staff that go in on a routine basis. And we also, the managers also go in on a routine basis into the office, just to make sure that, you know, we have everything rolling out and staff are working continuously to help our customers. And so into our statistic report, looks a little different for this meeting because we've had some more applications to come in. So we've issued one new motorcycle instructor application, and we've renewed 27 new renewals for the motorcycle program. We haven't had any new or renewal instructors for the ATV program. We've also issued, at this point from our last meeting, 1,300 and I believe 8 certificates. I'm sorry, 1,350 certificates that we've issued for the motorcycle program. This concludes my report, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen. Members, questions? All righty, we'll move on then to the customer service division.
Quiet question.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Rick, go ahead, please. Okay, I believe we might have technical difficulty here. Once again, Rick Wyatt. Rick? All right, at this time, we are unable to hear Mr. Wyatt. So we will move ahead to our customer service division. We're calling on Jacqueline Rush, the customer service manager.
Hi, good morning. I'm not sure if you're able to hear me. Can you know?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. This is Jacqueline Rush in the customer service division. So what you can see before you are the numbers of calls and emails that we received in September. Those calls are going to be related to application instructions, renewal application instructions, and checking on the status of the license for the most part. And that's all I've got for you.
Okay, members, questions? We will move on.
Thank you. Can I try again?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Rick White, TDLR industry rep. Just a couple of questions on renewals, especially I think both for Jacqueline and Chloe. Is there a direct line, or actually personally, I expired today. My application was sent in a month ago I reached out via email, got very little response. So there seems to be some delay in getting answers or getting updates. As of my last Friday or Thursday we're working on it. So is there a way to reach out directly to a certain department for a coach to find out their status or what is needed to continue?
Mr. Wyatt, this is Chloe Whalen. you're very welcome to reach out to our customer service department, who will be able to go in and look at your record to see if anything has been updated on there. Currently, we have experienced a little of COVID-19 in our finance department. So there has been just a little delay, and we are getting those applications to us.
So does that mean an application or renewal is delayed until payment is processed, even though all the paperwork is in?
Yes,
and
yes,
it-
sir. So once our finance department receives the mail in, they do the processing of the payment, and then they'll send that information to us, to our licensing department, to my team, and then we'll process the application and the payment to get your renewal out to you.
Okay, there's just for transparency, as much as I dislike the word, there's very little communication back to the coach on the status of that. So I know it's a big department, you're handling several different other programs, but it's something that the coaches have been used to. It seems like there's been an increase in correspondence and information back and forth versus the old DPS system, which understandably it was a smaller department. So my suggestion is some way to increase the information back to the recipient to keep them updated in the process.
Absolutely. We'll check into that. Yes, sir.
Okay, Keith Rovell, presiding officer. I had a question also regarding the current computer program that is used, REMS, for updating and keeping current on the information about the instructors. When somebody is renewed, does that show up again on REMS like it used to, or is that just our responsibility now to keep that information current?
Presiding officer Reveal, Chloe Whalen. We are, for the purpose of the course providers needing the instructor information, we do go in and update their CPR and their first aid information to show in the REMS so that you guys can see that it is current right now until we do something else with a different program. So the actual instructor information is in another database, but we are currently updating REMS to show that they are current and that they do have their CPR and their first aid for you, for the course providers.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Jeff Alford, TDL Advisory Board.
Yes,
What's the
Jeff.
time frame the coaches should expect right now, given all of the demands on everyone's time? How much lead time do they need to submit their application with a realistic expectation of a return so that they do not experience a delay in availability?
Well, if they, I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute. Mr. Alford, if the applicant will submit their renewal, as soon as they receive it, we can, once we receive it, we can definitely get it processed. The renewals are going out at 90 days prior to the license expiring. So no sooner than the licensee receives their renewal, they can send it in.
Could you clarify what you mean by that?
So no sooner than they receive their paper renewal to renew their license, they can send that back to us with their renewal fee. Once the department receives it and processes it in our mailroom and our finance department and sends it to our licensing department, then we'll get it processed.
I'm not being clear in some way. I've never renewed, but my renewal is coming in the next few months. How much advanced time do I need to send it in before I'm available to have a realistic expectation to be able to continue to coach? I've never received any notification whatsoever. I don't know what you're referring to.
So Mary Winston, TDLR, Mr. Alford, very good questions. And we all know this is a new process for everyone. What I'm hearing Chloe say is that, are you 90 days out, Mr. Alford?
No, I'm beyond 90 days.
Okay, so at 90 days, and Chloe, correct me if I'm wrong, what will Mr. Alford receive? Will he receive a card, an email? What will he receive?
Mr. Alford will receive a paper renewal form
In the
that
mail.
will be in the mail, that will be
Okay.
mailed to you.
So, Mr. Alford, when you receive that paper renewal form, and I didn't hear an answer, to be honest with you, Mr. Alford. So I'm going to agree with you. I didn't hear an answer, but what I did hear Chloe say was that in that 90 days, when you get that paper in the mail, the sooner the better. That when you get that, it would be fantastic if you would send it immediately back. Now we don't anticipate, but we can't anticipate when we have a COVID event. I'll say that
Mm.
slows things down, and that may have caused some delay currently. But just in case of that, possibility, the sooner the better. Now, I don't know if Chloe has this. We typically have data for how long it takes for a license to issue per program. This is new, and Chloe, I'm not sure if we have that data yet. So I don't know that we can answer your question fully, Mr. Alford, if that makes any sense.
No, that was the clarification I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
All right. Any other questions? Discussion?
Rick White, I do have a question.
Yes, sir, Rick. Go ahead.
While checking over the TLR chart, I noticed some of the other programs are able to renew online. Is there a possibility that we could visit that as well for renewals only for coaches to speed up the process, especially online payment versus having to send a check or a money order?
Mr. Wyatt, yes, that is something that we have going on in the works, especially with our new licensing system. You will be able to renew online. With the current database that we have, we're not able to provide that service right now.
Mary Winston again, I'm sticking my nose in. Mr. Wyatt, we are so anxious to get this system up. You just cannot believe, but we're just not there yet. We're not there yet. I know licensing is more anxious than anyone, but that's the goal with the new Texas licensing system. Did I say it correctly? Or
Yes.
license system? That yes, paper, snail mail, we take it all, but once we get that system in, and I know that our I think our deputy executive director is speaking today. But for the executive report, so we can talk a little bit more about that licensing system that will help that you have that ability. So yeah, we're going to do that. And I'm pausing because I'm getting a message from a licensing director. Okay, so yes, for that question that Mr. Alford asked, so the sooner the better. And when we get the ability to have online renewal, that will cut it down substantially. Sorry, Chloe.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Mr. Wyatt? Yes, sir. All right. Other additional questions to discussion?
Presiding Officer Ravel, I have a follow-up to your question.
Yes, sir. Please.
The stats that we have to track to be able to report how many classes per type in a given date range was a feature of the coach zone as opposed to sponsor zone. I believe that's what you were asking about as far as being able to see the data as a coach, not as a sponsor. And that was removed as our access was removed from that portion of the website. How our coaches going forward need to be able to track the number of classes taught so we can report accurately now that our access has been removed from that site.
Mr. Alford, the education department will be able to, Mr. Ford will be able to, Mr. Strand will be able to address that part of the portal for you regarding the courses.
Okay.
All right. Additional questions, discussion? If there are.
This is Roger Bowles.
Yes,
one
Roger.
quick question. Keith, on that portal, I noticed that the CPR certification expiration date is also removed. Is that just going to go along with the licensing part?
Mr. Bose, Chloe Whalen,
Yes.
that part on the RIMS portal has been updated for us to enter that information on there for now. But we
Okay.
also put it on the in the database for the licensing portal on our side for the record of the instructor.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we, Keith Ravel, presiding officer, do we have a projected date when the new system will come online?
This is David Gonzalez. I can speak to that definitely during the executive report, but it's still a ways for the new system. In fact, we're looking for some funding as well for the second phase of the system, but it's going to be a little bit of time. We're still going through user stories, but I'll address a little bit more during executive reports, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, sir. All right, any other discussion questions before we move on? If not, I'd like to call on Michael Strong, the E&E manager, for his report on education and examination.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I'm the manager for education and examination. Happy to be here today. For my report today, I have a riveting report. It's pretty simple, and we show one new curriculum that was approved in September, and that's all the statistics we have for today. So it seems like not a lot, but you've heard education and examination spoken about so far in other people's reports. We are heavily involved in a lot of ongoing projects and processes right now with general counsel, with licensing, everything else. So I don't know if our report fully reflects, everything that we're intimately involved in right now, but we've been busier than I think this looks right now. One of the things I wanted to touch on and kind of get into some of the questions that were asked was, contacts and who we are and what we look like. So the group that's processing the curriculum approvals would be Shannesty Villanueva and her group. E&E is split up into really two different sides: a side that processes applications for schools and curriculums that are coming in, and then my side as well, which is doing our outreach, our audits, and our policy development. So the individuals that will be coming out, auditing your schools, your courses, everything else fall under my team. Anything doing with applications for schools and curriculum is going to go to Shan and Angie and their team. So it's a little bit separate from the licensing process that you're talking about for individual licensing over there. So I wanted to clarify that for everybody today, so you understand a little bit about our education and examination division and kind of our role, because I was hearing a lot of questions on that. Also, to one of the members' questions earlier about RIMS, E&E is very much involved in the work groups with our advisory board and continuing our process development. So as you heard, Chloe answered some of those questions as far as how they update RIMS and everything else. There are parts of RIMS as we continue on in our development with our IT and with our work group that we're fleshing out those processes. So here moving forward, you're going to still hear from us on how the RIMS system is going to be integrated, how certain parts of that system are being pulled out, integrated into our licensing system, and making sure, first and foremost, that if we are making an update to that program, that we are not causing undue harm and not causing any issues there with making sure that you all have access to the information you need and continuing your business as normal. I hope that answers some questions for you all, and if not, that concludes my report, and I'm open to any other questions you all have.
Presiding officer Keith Ravel, I have a question just for a point of clarification. Can you tell the board what the new curriculum is that you have approved?
Mr. Ravel, I do not have the exact name of that curriculum on hand, but I can get it to you all here very soon and report that to you. I'm sorry, that's not the information I have right now, but I can find out for you.
Okay, again, Keith Ravel, presiding officer. Is that for student training, instructor training? What would that be?
We're looking into it right now, Mr. Ravel, and I will get that to you as soon as possible. Right now, on the statistics that I have, it was not broken out by the curriculum type that was submitted to us. So I'll get you that answer here very shortly.
Okay, but just to confirm again, Keith Ravel, it has been approved already,
Correct. Yes, sir.
but we don't know what it is.
It's not reported on here, but it is. I'll get you that immediately. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, do we have any additional questions or discussion?
Jeff Alford, advisory board member. The question I asked earlier, how does a coach know how many numbers of courses they've taught so that we can report that to our governing bodies so we can recertify, for example, within MSF, we need to state how many classes we've taught in a given date range by curriculum, and our access was removed. So how are we going to get those numbers?
It's a great question, Mr. Alford. And the instructor portal of RIMS was turned off, but the schools are still reporting the course data to us, and that information should still be available in there and is getting reported for what they need. We are still getting MSF recertifications coming in all the time, but that all should be still able to be reported off the school completions.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or discussion for Mr. Strawn?
Rick Wyatt, TDLR advisor.
Yes, sir, Rick.
Mr. Strawn, just as you noticed, we do like to know for future reports exactly what curriculums and all that. So just be aware that it's going to be a frequent question. You might want to break it into the basic course, advanced course, 3-wheel courses, total control versus MSF. We're that kind of data people.
Absolutely. Moving forward, we'll make sure that our curriculum reports will break out the curriculum type and everything else that is pertinent to that information for you all.
Mr. Wyatt, Mary Winston here. You read my mind and then some because I don't have that language. And so we have all kind of, we're growing, right? And this is new. And this is the exact information that we need to know because though Michael doesn't, and we call him Ford, doesn't have that in the report, yeah, we have it in the division, and we'll make sure that we have it in the meetings because our reports for every program and every advisory board meeting, they change. They're kind of living things, and when more things are requested, that's when we get that information if we have it available. So those comments were right on point, and thank you. That helps us grow.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, members, additional questions, discussion? And at this time, we will move on to our report on the enforcement division, and we have Jamie Arabia, the enforcement prosecutor, who will make the report for us.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Ravel. Chairman Ravel. My name is Jaime Arabia, and I am the prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. I would also like to say good morning to the other board members. I will be providing the Enforcement Division staff report this morning. Now, on personnel updates, on October 1st, Jackie Revilla was promoted to prosecutor, legal assistant manager, to fill the vacancy created by the retirement of Daryl Kuntz. Jackie has worked for TDLR for about 18 years, and she previously served as legal assistant supervisor in the Enforcement Division. Now, regarding statistics, the enforcement performance measures and key statistics for all TDLR programs combined for fiscal year 2020. Now, the next is the performance measures. Now, performance measures, I'll answer any questions you have regarding these performance measures, but I wanted to point one out that probably you've noticed that you may want some information regarding that performance measure, and that's number 5. And number 5 says percentage of cases resulting in disciplinary action. And the answer to that is 13.48%. You may think that's kind of low, but that's in keeping and consistent with the department's philosophy that we rather have someone be compliant than seeking some type of administrative action or a sanction. And administrative action is a monetary fine that's paid directly to the state, and a license sanction is an action that's placed upon a respondent or a customer's license, such as a probated suspension, a full suspension, all the way up to a revocation. We try to balance a couple of things here. If there's been no harm to the Texas public, which is our #1 priority, the safety of the Texas public, and there's been no harm, economic or otherwise, we may withdraw a notice of alleged violation, which is our charging document. And we do that because we want to give that person, our customer, a chance to be compliant, and we'd rather have compliance than issuing a penalty or a sanction. That's why that stat is kind of low. Now, the next page is a source of cases open for the fiscal year 2020. Again, I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, but I wanted to talk about 2 things. That is number 4 and number 5, penalties assessed and penalties collected. Now, if you look at penalties assessed, $2.36 million roughly, and penalties collected, $1.3 million approximately. Now, that's roughly around 55% of collections of the penalties that we do assess, and that's normal. If you go year to year, it ranges from 48 to about 57%. So we're within that range. So that's nothing unusual. And the staff report, they wanted me to talk to you also about the enforcement plan and also the criminal convictions guidelines. So I'd just like to state it this way. You know, being consistent in the investigation and the resolution of enforcement cases is very important in order to have effective enforcement. Now, the Enforcement Division strives for consistency by utilizing 3 guidance documents that are regularly updated. And the first one is the Complaint Resolutions Procedures Manual, which has detailed procedures in handling complaints from intake to investigation and ultimately to the prosecution section, which ultimately resolves these cases. And the second one is the enforcement plan. Now, the enforcement plan, it describes the ranges and penalties and license sanctions that apply for specific allegations or violations of the rules and the statutes enforced by the department. And the third guidance document is the Criminal Convictions Guidelines, which sets out for each license type that is regulated by the department the specific criminal convictions that may make a future customer or licensee unsuitable for obtaining such a license. And it also includes the reasons why those particular crimes are considered to relate to that specific license that that individual is trying to obtain. So those are the 3 things that we use to strive for consistency. Like, I'll repeat it again because it's very important, consistency for effective enforcement. Now, if you have any further questions or any questions regarding this staff report. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, and at this time, do any of the members have questions or discussions for Mr. Aribia?
Mr. Arabia, Jeff Alford, advisory board member.
Yes.
Do you have any of these stats broke down that pertains to this board specifically?
Good question, Mr. Alford. We spoke. I spoke with, actually, we didn't speak. We communicated between Chris Russey and our general counsel, Derek Burkhalter, this morning, and we have no current open cases or any orders regarding your particular program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions at this time?
Rick Wyatt, advisory board member.
Yes, sir.
I understand that the data is for TDLR as a whole. Of course, limited data for our program, but in the future, could we break it, add our program into it, as Mr. Alford just stated, so we have some idea what's going on with our department or our board as a whole, or our program, sorry.
Yes.
Everything.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Excellent question. I just wanted to tell you, since we received your program on September 1st, 2020, we have little activity. But yes, I'm sure Mary Winston will explain it probably in more detail. But we will provide additional information, especially since we are appearing before your board. You're going to obviously want to have information relating to your specific program. And yes, definitely, we will have that in the future.
Well, Jaime, thank you. But Mr. Wyatt, Mary Winston, I'm poking in again. Yes, typically these reports show the agency's numbers and statistics, and then they show the program statistics. I'm only going to guess that there is no program statistic here because the numbers are 0, but we probably should have put them there anyway, and we will in the future. Because I'm hearing it's 0, but we want to see it, right? And we are getting a good sense, and I'm actually loving it. It's reminding me of our driver education safety. We want hard code facts. Even if there's 0, we want to see that 0 number, and we will definitely do that.
If I could jump in real quick, Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is Chris Russey, Management Analyst for the Enforcement Division. So the statistics that are shown for you today are based off of fiscal year 2020. Now that time frame is September 1, 2019 through August 31st, 2020. Now, as you know, your program did not come over to us till September 1, 2020, so y'all weren't with us yet as these statistics are shown. Now in the future, you have that one column that's next to all these statistics. Y'all will actually have a column of your own in future staff reports. So as we move forward by your next one, for sure, we will have a column of data that's relevant just to your program. This is just for a statistical timeline that y'all weren't with us yet.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Chris.
At some point, will TDLR put out for licensees and programs a list of what is enforceable action so that we have guidelines on that?
Yeah, yes, we will, Mr. Ravel. Excellent question. What's going to happen is in the future, we're going to develop a penalty matrix for your specific program. Now, in that situation, it goes somewhat like this. The prosecutor creates, I'm sorry, I hear a lot of background noise.
Yes, members, please mute your mics if you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. A prosecutor creates a draft.
Yes, again, members, please mute your mics if you are not speaking. We are getting a lot of background noise. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No problem, Chairman Ravel. A prosecutor is going to create a draft of the penalty matrix based on the historical classifications of like violations in other programs. And what that means, for example, when we were doing the driver education safety program, because it's kind of similar to this, because we're going to be talking about licenses of schools and instructors, we look at things like, I'll just give a brief example. For example, you wouldn't want someone to have some type of background, a criminal conviction. If you're going to be dealing with people, to have some type of assaults in your case, or some type of battery in your background. We look at the relevancy, we look at things like that. And then the second part of drafting the penalty matrix is then we present it to the enforcement work group, and that's going to be comprised of members of your advisory board. And remember, that's going to be a rough draft. So we can tweak it however you feel that we need to tweak it. And changes are based on your work group recommendations. And the draft matrix is presented to the full advisory board to seek their recommendation for commission approval. And if there is an approval and you recommend approval, the matrix is then presented to the commission for the full approval. And if approved by the commission, the matrix is published in the Texas Registry and the Register, excuse me, and on the department's website shortly thereafter. And the Texas Register is a weekly publication that serves as a journal of state agency rulemaking for the state of Texas. So in a nutshell, that's what's going to happen in your particular program. We haven't got there yet. We still have to, we're going to go through those processes, and there may be someone else in the department that has more of an explanation of what's going to happen next regarding that. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any additional questions to discussion at this time? All right. If not, we will move on then for the report from the executive office. And we have David Gonzalez, the Deputy Executive Director, who will present that report.
Good morning, Chairman Rovell, advisory board members. I am really loving the enthusiasm that all of y'all have. You know, 2 months into the program here at the agency, and y'all are asking questions of a seasoned advisory board. So this is great. This is exactly what we expect from y'all and what we need in order to get our jobs done. I think y'all will find when we get to agenda item H, a lot of the things that y'all are interested in, and maybe even chomping at the bit at a little bit, to make sure that's going to be where the work is done, and we need y'all's help to get it done. I'm going to go on with the executive office report. Last meeting, I provided y'all a COVID-19 response on how we deal with it at the agency. There's an external response, and y'all seen our website. The internal response has been probably the biggest challenge for us, transferring information on our website and sharing with the governor and the CDC and the DSHS agencies are doing. That's a transfer of information, and it involves our program sometimes where we actually have to ask for waivers, and we put that information on our website. The internal component is something that's been difficult because, as Mary alluded to earlier, we can't expect exactly what's going to happen. We have PPE, we have protocols in place for the workplace. We don't control all our staff's personal outings and the things that they do. We are offering them guidance. In fact, our executive director has even done videos wishing our staff well when holidays come up, and we've got the Thanksgiving holidays coming up. They will be getting a reminder message about staying safe and keeping yourself out of harm's way in regards to COVID-19, because we have obligations to the public. We want people showing up for their work and being able to get the job done. But it has been a challenge for us, and we haven't been immune to the health challenges. We've had staff contract COVID. We've had to have sanitizing in the office more than once, and it has been difficult. So again, to reiterate the question that was raised earlier, when do you send in your application? As soon as you get a renewal notice. I would say this for every program: the earlier the better. The earlier the better, because we just don't know what's going to happen a month from now. We have had a spike and rise in the numbers, and we just want to make sure to give you all the best service we can. So it's in your interest for all of our programs to get your applications in as early as possible. It helps us to have that renewal. If you try to do it too early and we don't have the digital record of the paperwork, it's going to be difficult. In regards to the COVID-19 update, we are still playing it by ear as far as a return to office. all of our work is being done as effectively and efficiently as possible because of the work that our IT section has done. We have people that are actually still showing up in the office to do the mail and process the paper applications, everything that we can do remotely and have digitized information, scanned information, we're doing that as well so we can keep the processes flowing. That leads me to legislative appropriations request. Our work is hard to do and we have to have money to do it. The governor and the state is in a budget crunch and they asked us to cut back, pull the belts tight a little bit, a 5% decrease in fact. And so we've had to pull the belt tight, find out where we're going to have our resources and put our monies. But two items on our legislative appropriations request I think are most important to you. The very first one is the continuation of our Texas licensing system. This is something we requested funding for a couple years ago because when our growth has happened at the agency, we've inherited REM systems. We've inherited we have eight, actually maybe even 9 different disparate database systems as we've inherited programs that we're having to manage. And it doesn't make us as effective as we can be if we had one single program. So we had the foresight and they were generous enough to grant us the phase 1 funding for the legislative appropriations request. We're requesting phase 2 funding that will get our major main programs, which is bar cause, our biggest programs, electricians and massage. Y'all don't hear motorcycles on there yet. Y'all are in line and y'all will make it to that system. As they alluded to earlier, it is in our licensing staff's best interest. It is in the customer's best interest for us to get as quickly as possible. You want a date? We have some deliverables that have been coming due as we work through the process, but it'll probably be long into 2021 before we have a system up and running. And again, motorcycles may not make the top of the list as far as being in the new system. Online renewals, however, may be something we can work a little bit quicker and not have to wait for the Texas licensing system. I don't want to make any promises on that, but these are things that our IT and software development services divisions can help us with as we gain capacity, especially as we move to a single licensing system instead of managing all the different systems. $1.9 million is what we requested for phase 1. We were requesting $1.6 million for phase 2. Again, that's to prop up a single licensing system. Our staff has been working diligently with Red River, who is our vendor, to get that work done and make sure we got all the user stories, all the reports, and some of the things that y'all are bringing up that y'all want to see. We're trying to make sure if we don't have it now in our current systems, we're going to have it in this new system. So we're very excited about that. The second, probably most important legislative appropriation request item is in pulling our belts tight. There were 3 positions that were going to be dedicated to the motorcycles program that we have frozen for now, and we're requesting in our legislative appropriations request to get those positions back. Again, the budget crunch has made us pull the belt tight, not just on y'all's program, but other programs as well. We want to get those positions so that we can do everything as most people with their programs. So we will keep you updated as the session goes on. It's just around the corner, and hopefully our work and the progress that we've made will allow our record to stand for itself, and we'll be able to get our request fulfilled. Any questions on those 2 items? Lastly, Ms. Delia, if you could share the communication outreach statistics. So this is something we do for every one of our programs. We let y'all know how y'all's web pages are working and how effective we're being in getting our information out. Obviously, we have some work to do. That's why y'all had questions and things that we can do to improve our reports. But on y'all's web page for motorcycles and ATV operators, over the past 6 months since May, and obviously we didn't get the program to September, so we didn't have a lot of traffic until really closer to September. The motorcycle and ATV page has had 16,854 views. 59% of those visitors access your site from a desktop computer, while 37% did it from a smartphone or a tablet. The top reasons for visiting the site: finding a motorcycle school, forums and publications, program transfer FAQs, finding a licensed instructor, and ordering course completion certificates. Now, if y'all have ideas, which y'all have given us your ideas, and we have staff taking these down, we need to hear that. If there's a better way we can set up the information on our website as far as order or prominence on the page, we want to make sure we're giving out the information so that you don't have to talk to a live person. You can gather the information, do a lot of the self-service, which is expected today. If we can give you the information or have all the processes available to you online, there's no reason to talk to a state government worker. We're here to help and be the best public servants we can, but if we can have all the information on the website and easily locatable, that's the best case scenario for everyone involved. So that's all I have for the report today. Again, I can answer any questions related to COVID legislative appropriations request or TLS and the Texas licensing system or our outreach statistics.
Okay, members, are there any questions or discussion? Okay, I will take that silence as no. Thank you, David. We have been at this for just under an hour. Does anyone need a break, a short break at this time? If so, we can do it if you wish.
Quick quiet member. I so motion we take at least a 5-minute break.
All right, let's go ahead and at this time take a 5-minute break. You can go ahead and mute your microphones, please. Stop your video, and we will return in 5 minutes. Welcome back to the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation Motorcycle Safety Advisory Board meeting. It is currently 10:57, and we are going to resume the meeting at this time. And I see members still coming aboard. The next item on our agenda is the update and consultation on the proposal to contract with the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, TEEX, to administer the instructor training program pursuant to the Texas Transportation Code. And I would like to call on Derek Burkhalter at this time, the Assistant General Counsel. Mr. Burkhalter.
Thank you. Good morning. Derek Burkhalter, Assistant General Counsel for TDLR. Is my audio coming through okay?
Yes, sir, it is.
Excellent. Okay, because this agenda item concerns a contract with TEEX, and we have a member of the advisory board, the representative of TEEX, Mr. McNew, I will just start with the proviso that Mr. McNew is participating as a representative of TEEX for this agenda item and not as a member of the advisory board. Now, the update on this will be somewhat brief. What I can tell you is that negotiations are ongoing. The work group consisting of Mr. Rovell, Mr. Litvin, and Mr. Scheck-Snyder has done an excellent job and is in advising TDLR, and they have been involved in every step of the way. And we are trying to address all the concerns that were raised by the board and by the work group members. It would not be appropriate to discuss those negotiations or the substance of the negotiations in a public meeting right now, because we don't want to harm the negotiations and we don't want to make any representations to the public as to what the ultimate agreement may be. So I would ask the work group members to please not discuss the substance of those negotiations. As I said, we've held a series of meetings with the work group separately and with TEEX. We have identified the issues that need to be resolved. We are exploring options to address those concerns. But again, it is an ongoing process. We have definitely slowed down the process to address all the concerns that have been raised. With that, I'll open it up to any general questions, and I would ask members again to not discuss the substance of our negotiations.
Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Burkhalter? Okay, there being no questions, thank you. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the update on the proposal to contract with TTI, the Texas A&M Technical Institute, to research motorcycle safety and provide advocacy and education to the public on motorcycle safety issues, again, pursuant to the Texas Transportation Code. And Mr. Burkhalter, you are still on the agenda. So we go back to you.
Thank you again, Derek Burkhalter, TDLR. So this agenda item, similarly, because it involves a contract with TTI, and Mr. Manser is here as a representative of TTI. He will be participating in that capacity and not as a board member. I don't believe there were any conflicts or any. I don't believe the board had any issues with the proposal at our last meeting. We do not yet have a finalized contract. I think our efforts have been focused primarily on the TEEX agreement, and the TTI agreement may be, it's possible it could be affected by how the TEEX agreement plays out. But if the TEEX agreement is not done relatively soon, we may have to go ahead and execute the TTI contract. We've not had negotiations in the same way because I don't think there were any issues But if any advisory board members had any issues with that proposal, now would be the time to speak up. But otherwise, this is still a work in progress. But as of right now, we have not executed the agreement. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up for any questions.
Members, any questions to discussion?
So this is Michael Manser from TTI. I do just want to make one comment. The proposal assumed a year-long project starting September 1, and we are at middle of November here, coming on December. So whenever a decision is made to fund the work, keep in mind that kind of the way it plays out in my head is the end of that proposal, the last task or two needs to be prorated or chopped off to account for the shorter fiscal year. So any work that we don't get done in this year would automatically carry over into the following year.
We will certainly take that into consideration and address that time issue in our agreement, as we will as well with the TEACS agreement, which has similarly been postponed.
Okay, board members, any additional questions, input, discussion? Thank you. And we move on now to item H on our agenda, the discussion and possible appointment of work groups to address matters relating to standards and processing for licensing and education. And once again, Assistant General Counsel Derek Burkhalter, you are up and have the floor.
Thank you again, Derek Burkhalter. So for this item, there were many subjects that were identified for possible agenda items that needed to be addressed. And so we phrased this item somewhat broadly to try to allow for a discussion of all those items and not to list them out individually. But this is kind of the sort of the heart of this meeting. We already have one work group assigned, which is the group to assist with the TTI contract or TEACS and the TEACS contract proposal. But in this agenda item, we may need to add additional work groups. Generally, we like to assign work groups that kind of align with our division structure within TDLR. So I would propose that we have something like a licensing work group to address issues of qualifications and processes for licensing and license renewal. We could have a education work group to deal with things like curriculum approval and the requirements and processes for that. I would propose that we extend the current work group and have that be a work group to advise on contracts and grants, because the statute does allow us to have a grant program, which at some point we may utilize if we have the appropriate funding. And these are just my suggestions, kind of how I had it framed in my mind as far as how to divide all the various subjects. I would propose that we have something like a standards of conduct work group, and that would address, standards, and we could divide it either by, maybe one for instructors and maybe one for schools, but just generally the requirements and the standards for the operations of the schools, and or what's expected of instructors, what is their standard of conduct, what actions are required, things like that. But again, that's just my idea. If members have additional ideas as to how we can divide up the subjects, we're open to that. And generally, Mr. Presiding Officer, you have the power to decide the work groups and assign the members to those work groups. So maybe we should just kind of start and see what issues we're dealing with, and then if we identify a work group to deal with those issues as they come up, then we can do it that way, or we can go ahead and decide what the work groups are before we deal with the issues. Mr. Ravel, I'm open to how you would like to handle that.
All right. Keith Ravel, presiding officer. I like what you're bringing up. What I would ask, if possible, is could you perhaps put in writing and send out with the minutes for this meeting to the board members your ideas for those specific work groups, so that we have a chance just to kind of mull it over a little bit, and then we could bring it up at our next meeting and assign the work group members at that time.
Certainly, that works for me totally. And so, as I said, we had a long list of suggested items. In reviewing those items, some of them were just questions that needed to be answered, and I was able to address those with a couple of people. But they may be questions that need to be answered in a public forum because they may be on everyone's minds. And so, we can just sort of address issues as they come up in your minds. And to the extent that myself and my staff can answer questions, we can do that. And for things that are actually issues that need to be worked out and, improvements made either to our internal processes or to our rules, we can assign those to work groups. Generally, the way we do this is to assign things to a smaller work group outside of a quorum, so we can really flesh out ideas and things like that, and then present them later to the full board to be considered and possibly voted on. So I see Mary kind of.
Yeah, poking my hand up. Okay. Hi, I'm Mary Winston, TDLR. And typically, all of our groups are different. But we all have some of the same issues. If there's education involved, continuing education, so forth, we typically have an E&E work group, education and examination work group, and that work group, when issues come in arising from things that deal with that is what the work group handles. Mr. Ravel, the standard, Delia, if you could give us the names of the standard work groups that we have, and we'll see how that fits here, just to kind of get us a little picture.
I will, just a moment, if you will give me just a second to look for one.
So I know we typically have E&E, which is education and examination. We typically have standard of care, which may be called a little something different here. We typically have enforcement, which is something that Jaime talked about earlier, which is going to help develop our processes and our penalty matrix and all things enforcement. So that's a work group. And I know I'm missing licensing. That is the other typical work group that I've kind of come up with them off the top of my head. And if there is a specific work group, an ad hoc work group, that's assigned at such time that it's needed. I think I came up with them, Delia. Can you give them to me?
Yes, we have for E&E school instructors, for one, that's some of them. CE curriculum and course providers.
That's going to be all under education and examination. And the next work group?
Enforcement compliance.
Yes, okay.
Convictions and rule alignments.
Next work group?
And that is what I have for one of
okay.
them.
So we also, and that'll be good. I think I've come up with them. So Mr. Ravel, as presiding officer, this is your call. As long as you assign a number less than a quorum, you can assign folks to these work groups. So for instance, I think one that we could probably at least get off the ground today, and I say get off the ground because this is work that is looked at by this smaller work group, this non-quorum number, and the findings of that work group are brought back to the major body, the rest of the body, for discussion and voting at that time. So this is work between these meetings. My suggestion, and it's of course your decision, sir, is to possibly look at that enforcement work group, because Jaime, as there were questions before about what sort of violations and complaints and so forth, and what's the penalty matrix, we can begin working on that. in the work group. And then we can bring those findings back towards this body, to this body at a later date to discuss that work. And that, Mr. Ravel, you would appoint a number smaller than a quorum. Typically, we take volunteers, but if someone doesn't volunteer, they're often voluntold by the presiding officer. But this is also a group that typically a lot of advisory board members have an interest in being in this work group. And so it's not that I'm starting with an easy one. I'm starting with one that has a lot of interest and is typically easy to pick. For our presiding officer who's new in starting this. And I also noticed from this meeting that we have questions related to education and examination. And that's another work group that you can also appoint. And you don't have to. This is just how these typically these things flow. And our executive director is fond of saying, as was his predecessor, we keep things here the same until they have to be different. So the same will be, in this case, the name groups. And they'll change when they have to be different. And also the issues that they deal with are going to be specific to this program. So that's just starting out. And Derek, I know you've identified a lot of issues in discussions with different folks and about what's needed here, but thinking about starting with possibly working in the midst of, I know the holidays are coming, but we do have this virtual platform. And if we have volunteers, then we can definitely begin some of the work with our enforcement staff of figuring out what will a penalty matrix look like for this program here at TDLR. Thoughts, presiding officer?
Thank you, Presiding Officer Keith Rovell. At this time, excellent. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Derek, everybody, and Delia. If we're going to start out with enforcement and compliance at this time, we have volunteers for this work group. Okay, Jeff Alford. Okay. Kyle McNew. Okay, and anyone else? And Chris. So we have Jeff, Kyle, and Chris for the work group for enforcement and compliance at this time. That is Chris Litvin, Jeff Alford, and Kyle McNew. Okay.
Okay, at this point, you've made it so because you're the presiding officer, and a staff member will reach out from enforcement. Jaime will likely reach out, or someone else from enforcement, to get this process going. So we can kind of learn how TDLR typically does a penalty matrix and how that can be specified for this program. So you'll be getting a call out from someone from enforcement to check with your schedules, and we'll be using some sort of virtual platform, and you'll get information to kind of work with this meeting. The only thing that we request is that you please not discuss it with the other members until we get to this public meeting, because we don't want to violate quorum.
All right. And at this time, Keith Rovell, did we want to go ahead and at this time, board members, pick a work group for education and examination? We can begin the work on that. I would be willing to volunteer on that one also. Roger, Chris?
Keith, can I just make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Chris Litvin, advisory board member. I have two things in my mind. On the one hand, I appreciate Mary Winston's suggestion to get the ball rolling and get some things going that we need answers for and get this in process and the holidays coming up. But on the other hand, I also really appreciated your suggestion, Keith, that maybe we, that you had mentioned after Derek had reported, that maybe it would be, if you're looking for volunteers to make knowledgeable decisions on what they want to volunteer for, it would be helpful for us to have a list of the boards, the working groups that are needed, and maybe a short 1 or 2 paragraph description of what kind of items they would be tackling, so that we would know what we want to get ourselves into. So I'll leave that up to you to strike that balance. But just a comment that I would find it useful to know, you know, what some of them are fairly, I think I know what I'm getting into. Others I know less about.
Okay.
Mary Winston TDLR, Mr. Litvin, you've signed up for a whole bunch. You just don't know. Just by joining this group, you know, you're in for a treat. And the things may change. And of course, Presiding Officer Ravel, you don't have to move forward. Enforcement is one that I think is pretty clear as to where we're going with that. Now, education and examination, you're going to have some issues that you can start that ball rolling, but that will change as we move forward, right? But it is up to the presiding officer. I really do think that the folks that have volunteered thus far will be comfortable. And even if you move forward with the E&E work group, you'll just begin. But that's up to you. But I do feel very comfortable with enforcement as you've already appointed.
Thank you very much, Mary. Well, board, if it's agreeable to all, Keith Ravel, presiding officer, then let's go ahead and go with the Enforcement and Compliance Board working group as put forward with Chris, Jeff, and Kyle. And we'll hold off at this time, awaiting the paragraph description for what each one of these will kind of be responsible for from the Assistant General Counsel then prior to our next meeting. Okay. Discussion, questions at this time. So congratulations, Chris Litvin, Jeff Alford, and Kyle McNew. You have been volunteered. Very good. All right. Are there any other questions, discussion points, or anything to do with the appointment of work groups at this time? All right, we'll move on. Yes, please.
Keith, just one more question. I'm happy with everything so far. If when we get the list of work groups, as Mary and Derek have said, some of these work groups are probably going to be in perpetuity, and other work groups may pop up as the issue or need arises. And I have the feeling, or I assume possibly some of these work groups may have a need right now, but as this program gets more mature and TDLR may fade off. And that would be something that would be nice to know as somebody volunteering for these groups. If this is going to be a permanent work group, I know that the members can come and go from a work group potentially, or if this is going to be just, say, for the first 6 months until we get things ironed out, or it's just a one-time deal with an issue that's up right now.
Mr. Ravel, if I may.
Please, yes.
Mary Winston, TDLR, great questions, Chris. And actually, we typically start off with standing work groups, but the work does fall off. For instance, your initial work with enforcement, once we get this penalty matrix set up, once we get criminal conviction guidelines, you do the heavy lifting at the beginning. You're still a part of that work group. It doesn't disband because things could come up later. Typically, they don't. Not for this group. Once you have it set, unless there's some rule change or something like that, it would be a minor lift. Heavy lifting is right now for that work group. So those standing work groups continue, but your work will kind of really slack off after this first part. And with the one that we mentioned but didn't move forward with currently, the education and examination, again, that one's going to be heavy initially. It's going to be more work as we get that going, but that will also kind of slack off. The work group will remain, but you won't have a lot of work after a certain point, because sometimes in other advisory boards, we have folks who will volunteer for, say, enforcement because we need to get that penalty matrix up. We need to do the criminal conviction guidelines. And they work and work and work. And then they're like, we don't have anything to do. Well, that's the fact that you don't have anything to do. Not now. It'll come back around. Education and examination is one that there are topics that would be fantastic if we could, I mean, even to I think it was Mr. Alford's questions about the coach's information and those kind of things. That one is probably going to have more steady work. It's going to be a heavier lift now. It's going to be more steady work throughout. So it's not just that, we can get you a list definitely. and let you know what you're going to be looking at right now, that's going to change. And you're basically being volunteered because it's Mr. Ravel's responsibility and right to appoint. You can refuse him, but that when situations and issues and questions arise relating to education and examination or enforcement, you'll know, hey, that's part of my work group and I may be getting a call. David?
Yes, sir. Mr. Gonzalez?
Chairman Ravel and Mary Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, we have had instances where because of the need for work, where if we provide the lists to the advisory board members and they know what they're getting into, that the work groups have been anointed outside of the advisory board. They don't have to done formally in an advisory board meeting so that the work can get done. And I am thinking about education examination. There is work y'all have been chomping at the bit for. Our staff could benefit from the behind the scenes work before the holidays. And so when you get that list, just be prepared for someone reaching out and saying, hey, who do you want to volunteer, or have you had any names? The top, because I know y'all want some of this work done. We do as well, and getting it done before the holidays would help out on the education examination side.
Excellent. We're chomping at the bit.
I'll chomping at the bit, and I'm going to tell you, I'm getting pinged like Ford, Michael Strawn, though his he had a very limited report. I mean, he's like pinging me about information that we need them to work on rims. We need this. We need that. So staff is requesting if someone could be appointed to start to get that work kind of going on those questions. And again, that may change later, but that's going to be work right now. That's going to be, and you'll bring a report back from that work group to the body. So, and Ford also has information on the question that he didn't answer earlier. So I don't know if he wants to jump in here, but it sounds like y'all aren't the only ones who are chomping at the bit to kind of get this going. So,
okay. Members?
So, Keith,
Yes,
Michael
Mike.
Master from TTI.
Yes, sir.
I'm actually kind of struck throughout today's meeting that there are a lot of opportunities to kind of clarify the processes and the activities that need to be performed by instructors or even students. There's reporting we talked about earlier. David mentioned the website. And I know it's our job to advocate for the instructors, but I just want to reiterate that in every step of the way, when we form these working groups, we always have to keep in mind the end customer, and that's the student and the instructors. So whatever we can do to make the processes easier for them in terms of, say, website design or maybe even providing a list of what they have to do, we need to do that because, we are not our own customers. The customers here are the instructors and the students who have to get trained. So, and I'm happy. So I've got a background in user interface design and human factors, and I'm happy to sort of identify where in this larger system we need to smooth things out for the instructors and the students as they interact with this process that we're creating. Again, I just think it's really critical, and we've identified a few of these items even today, even board members not understanding clearly what has to be done or timing and all that. Well, if a few of us here are confused, we know that a lot of people out, a lot of the instructors and students are also going to be confused. So I just urge everybody to always put yourselves in the shoes of the instructors or the students through these working groups, through our activities, etc. And I'm more than happy to help out and give you my feedback on that as we move along.
Mary Winston, I did hear a volunteer in that. I did hear an I volunteer for a work group in that. I don't know if Mr. Ravel heard it, but I heard it.
I heard it.
Okay.
This is Mike again. I volunteer, yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Keith Ravel, the advisory board. Mike, one thing, you summed it up right there, and it's something that we brought up last meeting. You know, I think that the things that we always have to look at are affordability, both of time and monetary resources, and accessibility, ease of accessibility for the instructors and students. We have said those words before, and you're absolutely right to bring it up again. That should always be at the top of the agenda. And we thank you. Yes, sir. Ford.
Yes, sir. Michael Strawn, E&E. Mary mentioned earlier that I had information on the statement you all asked me earlier about the curriculum. I wanted to point out that when I went in and looked at that, it was a change of ownership and a school that kicked off a curriculum overview to make sure it met standards. So it wasn't actually a brand new course. It got change of ownership and fell into it. And that's one of the things, speaking to kind of y'all's point earlier, that when we break out those curriculums in the future, it'll be a little bit more detailed on exactly what that curriculum is, the type, and how it was new or coming in. But I wanted to kind of give you that little bit of information on that one. It came from Coastal Bend Motorcycle Academy. As far as the E&E work group, Mary, you said it beautifully. We really have a lot of things to work on. So members that are looking to be interested in that group, we have a lot of things we are looking at. Like I said, E&E works closely with the schools, the instructors, with all the processes that are happening there. And to Dr. Vancer's point, we certainly want to make sure that anything that we're doing with this work group is not causing a business impediment or harming the safety of the citizens of Texas out there. So that's why we look forward to individuals that are willing to work with the processes for our audits, for range qualifications, everything else that may come through there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Keith Revelle, presiding officer, and again, addressing this back to Mr. Burkhalter. How soon, realistically, can we get that breakdown of list of the work groups needed with a paragraph description, just so everybody knows, so we can get the ball rolling on this? Can it be done within the next week, 10 days, 2 weeks?
I believe it can be done within the next week. I'll kind of defer to Mary and Delia on this, but it shouldn't take too long just to get the work groups just kind of job description written out.
I think that, well, Mary Winston, I think that'll be fine. And Mr. Revelle, this, because holidays are coming up, because of the virtual distance that we all have to remain in at this moment, Mr. Revelle, this is going to go on to your responsibility right now. Though we typically, as presiding officer, though we typically do these appointments within our public meeting, it's not a requirement. We're just going to, this information is going to be given to you, sir. And you are to make those decisions on who you would like appointed to those work groups. Notify us, because we are going to make sure that there are no quorum issues or violations. And then we'll notify each member that they have now been appointed by their presiding officer as a member of this work group. And we can move on with that. I see I don't want to keep talking because I know Mr. Litfin has something good to say.
Yes, Chris.
Thank you, Chris Litfin, TDLR Advisory Board member. If I'm perfectly fine with it, if that's the way you want to do it, Mary and Keith. But my thought was, if you could send that list of names of work groups and descriptions out to the advisory board and the whole board members, then, for example, what I was going to do was I was going to reply to you with an email, Keith, and say, hey, you can put me on anything you want, but these are the 3 boards I'm really interested in. These are the 2 boards I'm not so much interested in. And then that way you would have a more informed decision-making process when you, what was it? Not volunteer, but voluntold. When you voluntold us which groups you want us on, at least you'll have an idea of which groups we're interested in or where our desires lie. So if we could do that, that would be good.
We can actually do that. We're going to put one little change in it because we want all of the information coming from one source. So it's going to come from Delia's going to head that up, and it'll come through the advisory.boards box. But that's just going to be our clearinghouse house for information in and information out. But Derek has said he can kind of get that done within the week. We'll coordinate internally, and that's fine. That email would come from advisory.boards and would come from Delia. And you can get your volunteers from there, Mr. Ravel, so you don't have to have everyone voluntold about what they're going to do. At least the majority of folks can pick what they want. Does that sound it will be outside of this public realm, but the board members and all that is letting the public know that Mr. McNew's on this board, Mr. Lifton's on, and
Right.
that's not terribly substantive because they will be notified of the substantive issues that these folks are going to bring to the board, right? But to do this pick, which is not required, the only requirement is that our presiding officer is in charge of picking. We can definitely do that if that sounds good to you, Mr. Ravel. But we will make sure that Delia is kind of the keeper of that information and the person who emails everything out to the group.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mary and Delia. Yes, that will help. Chris, excellent suggestion there. That way we can make sure that the people that are sitting on these working groups have an interest in being on them. And that was my main concern. So I appreciate that. That will help immensely. And as soon as I get that list, we will get these work groups set up immediately. Yes, Mike Manser.
So a quick question. This is more for TDLR staff. Our motorcycle advisory board is relatively new, and of course we're maturing at a pretty quick rate. But I assume that there are a whole bunch of issues that we as the board are probably not as keenly aware of yet that we should be. Things that maybe TDLR understands that we may need to be addressing sooner rather than later. In those descriptions, can you highlight from TDLR's perspective what some of those issues might be? That would really help us kind of forge a path forward with these working groups.
Derek Burkhalter, yes, we can certainly do that. Highlight the matters that TDLR has identified as kind of priority matters, certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, board, any additional questions, comments, discussion? Very good.
Presiding officer, I had a quick question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Jeff Alford, advisory board member. I was waiting to the very end when everything was covered to ask two quick questions. When contacting customer service via emails, very specifically, is it possible to get a reply from a replyable email instead of a do not reply? As I have had sent several inquiries in and I get irrelevant answers back and I have no way to follow up with them, so I have to start the process over again, hoping for a better result the second time, third time, fourth time. And my second question is in regard to the certificates we issue at the end of the course completion. Thank you to TDLR for all their great work getting those certificates made available on the website. But I do have a question about replacement certificates that are not issued with a serial number. It's just blank and we handwrite that in. And a way for the public, as Dr. Manser said earlier, they are our customers. They're the people that are going to have to come to either the school itself, but our records requirements are only 4 years, that we do not have to keep records beyond that. How would someone who's completed the course beyond that scope request an additional issued certificate with the original date and original numbers on it via the website, since that is not a currently available feature?
Yes, we recognize Michael Strawn.
So in regards to certificates that are issued by the school for the completion of their training, the end user, the student, would not be requesting a duplicate from TDLR. So as it stands currently, at the end of a 4-year period when your retention schedule is up, if they have lost and never taken their certificate to DPS and you all have stored your records at that time, then they would be required to take another course again. There would be no recoverable way for us to get that at that point in time, because we're not having you all report that data directly to us. We're also not the, while we control the design of the certificate, we are not issuing the certificate and not controlling those student records. You all are, so we wouldn't reissue it anyway. I hope that answers your question.
Chief Ravel, presiding officer. Yes, Michael, I think if I may speak to what Jeff is addressing, we frequently get students that have enlisted in the military or that have some other reason who have come back from foreign lands who, for whatever reason, to be able to ride on base or on military operations, have to show completion of a rider course. And it may have been more than 4 years. And during that time, that little piece of paper that they had has disintegrated. Would those people who are licensed riders then be required to have to take another class just to get that? Or should we, as providers, start keeping our records longer?
I would actually say that, that's something that I believe that we, when we talk about the E&E work groups and these things, that's going to be a matter, I think, that we really need to figure out what the best retention schedule is and the best process is at that point in time. For the time, if you are keeping it and we don't have access to it, then that would probably be their only recourse. But I think that's certainly something that for the betterment of the community and the riders that are out there, that we can come to terms on and figure out what the best process would be.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, board members, additional questions, comments? Keith,
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Chris Litfin, advisory board member. It goes a little deeper than just retention. A lot of times you have change of ownership or you have sponsors that go out of business. And in the past, under DPS took on that responsibility where they would issue certificates that are past retention period or that are were granted by defunct sponsors or changes of ownership. And I think DPS has a slightly different mission than TDLR does with the motorcycle safety program, and we could work on that in a work group, but retention alone is not gonna address that. And at some point, I mean, we like to help our customers out. That's what we're here for, to provide good customer service and safety. But at some point, years later, we have to settle it at some number of years where that just falls off. And then, but just to raise the additional issue of there's a lot of times sponsors change of ownership records don't exchange or they go out of business. We've had that happen a lot for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, David, you had a comment?
So it's to address Mr. Alford's questions regarding customer service. So we'll follow up on that for you, Mr. Alford. Typically, if you contact customer service, it's less than 24 hours before you get a response. There are processes we've established because, specifically because of COVID, but also because of the volume of work we have. If there's an attachment included in your email, those don't go to customer service that we have running the phone lines and emails with that tracking. It goes straight to our licensing division. So it gets into the hands of the people that are going to be looking at these attachments as quickly as possible. They don't have the same turnaround time because they're dealing with more specific and sometimes more drawn out circumstances. But we can look into that particular, your particular inquiries, and just generally, you're going to get an automated response when we have high turnaround times because of whatever reason, a new program coming on board. It'll take a little bit longer, but within 24 hours, you should get something back from customer service, and there would be a response from a representative that you should be able to respond to. But I'll look into it for you, especially if it's regarding to a recent one that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask a clarifying question, if I may.
Yes, please.
Jeff Alford, board member. We currently have a certificate without a serial number on it that we can use in that 4-year period to reissue an old certificate with the original date and original everything else on it. Currently available on the TDLR website. There is no place for me to order replacement certificates even in my 4-year window. Is there a plan to address that? And I'm almost sure Ford's going to say in the work group, I'm sure it'll come up again. But I want to ask the question publicly since I'm not the only sponsor watching this YouTube channel.
Yes, Derek.
Derek Burkhalter, TDLR, and I'm not sure if this directly answers your question, Mr. Alford, but I wanted to point out to the entire group and the public the current rule as it's stated in section 98.106, which is titled Verification of Course Completion. In subsection C, it says a motorcycle school may issue a duplicate course completion certificate to a student for a lost certificate for up to 3 calendar years from the date the course was completed. The duplicate certificate must bear the same certificate number and course completion date as the original certificate. So again, I'm not sure that directly addresses your question, but I just wanted to put that forward in this conversation to give some context.
Mr. Burkholder, you phenomenally restated my question. I need a blank certificate to rewrite that information in keeping with the law and the rules that govern this program. And there is nowhere to order a certificate from the website as you would order regular certificates with certificate numbers. I need a way to order blank ones, not just without student information, without serial numbers, so that I can rewrite an old serial number. That is not currently available.
Yes. E&E. You're correct, Mr. Alford. Right now, they're all serialized and pre-printed. So that's something that we'll need to address moving forward to make sure that you all have the capability to reissue that certificate following the rules as they are currently stated.
So Mary Winston, TDLR, and I'm just trying to make sure we stay on agenda as the requirement of it being posted. Very good questions. And some of these questions, not only will they come up in the in the working groups, they will be the reason that we are meeting for those working groups. So really good questions, and how to figure out that process. And staff, we do work to figure that process out, but we work with, honestly, our advisory board. We take advice from all of you on best processes, on how to move forward and to do that, because there's something lacking. We got you, and we don't want to unilaterally say we're going to do it this way, because we want your input and your guidance into how we need to do it. So I know Derek already has that on the list of what he's going to put out for the paragraph of what these different working groups will look like. So if there's anything else that's coming up, we kind of have meandered into recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting, board meeting. So, and all of this is recorded for posterity, of course, but getting responses to the questions that Mr. Alford's raised, which may come from within a working group that he's a part of. Not sure. We haven't gotten that far yet, but I think that might be one you might be interested in, giving us some little help there, because that's what our advisory boards are for. So it looks like we will have 4 recommendations. We'll have working group, they will be assigned, and it looks like we may even have reports from those working groups at that point, covering the different issues. And we do have some questions, Mr. Alford, concerning responses for customer service, and I've kind of been typing those in the background so we can get you some responses with those. So, and as always, if there are any other questions, and you're not a shy group, so I know I'll get that, but if there are any other questions or comments that you have post-meeting that you want us to bring up, then send us an email to advisory.boards so we can get that on the agenda. But it looks like a lot of matters will be covered in our next meeting under an agenda item that kind of loosely could read reports from working groups and stating which working groups discuss these things, because these issues will be wide open to discuss in those working groups once Derek gives us kind of like that synopsis. Yes, sir. Derek, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Derek. Derek Burkhalter, TDLR. And for those of you who have already submitted suggested items for discussion, you don't need to resubmit those. We still have your submission, and we will include that in the list for the work groups.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Derek. Let's move to our discussion of the date, time, and location of the next board meeting. At this time, shall we poll the board for the next meeting at this time?
Quick question. Rick White, TDLR board. I have a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
You kind of missed the suggestion for next board items. Two things I would like to get information or see addressed is, what is the current process for reciprocity for a MSF coach, or I'm not even sure what total controls process would be to become Texas certified? And what is the status of the TAVs, that's a technical assistant visit or / audit on current schools? Are they being conducted? Are they being scheduled? Or how will that be handled?
Okay, Keith Ravel, presiding officer, TDLR board. It would seem that those items would be addressed in the working groups under education and examination and enforcement and compliance. So hopefully we can have some of that information presented at the next board meeting. Okay. Do we have a suggestion for time and place for our next board meeting?
December 14th. The place should be online or where you're most comfortable.
Yes. Okay. We have a suggestion for December 14th. How does that stand with the board at this time? I see many thumbs up. All right. If that is acceptable to our board members, then we will set the date of the next meeting at December 14th. Does the 10 o'clock a.m. time work for everyone? And again, thumbs up from just about everybody. So at that time, if we will set our next board at 10 a.m., December 14th, same bat time, same bat channel here. We are set. Yes, Derek.
While I'm eager to get everything done very quickly, I just want to point out that we typically have to submit our meeting materials at least 10 days prior to the meeting. And additionally, right now, we're looking at not having the work groups possibly assigned as late as a week from now, which leaves us a very thin stretch of time over the Thanksgiving week to conduct the work group meetings and have everything submitted in time for the meeting. So again, while I'm eager to get everything started, I'm just not sure that December 14th is enough time for us to do the things we need to do.
Board members? Running up against the Thanksgiving holiday, the Christmas holiday, the New Year's holiday, and additional other times off with children and school and everything else. I don't know that we can wait much longer than that. Your thoughts, folks?
My only thought is that once we get that list of work group descriptions, I have no problem turning it around quickly. I don't want to, load up Derek or anything. I appreciate his concerns.
Yes.
So,
And
presiding officer.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mary Winston. We also we don't want to load up Derek. He just got back from vacation, and here we are loading up Derek. No, he's ready to go. He's ready to go. He's been in Colorado. He's loose. He's ready. But socially distanced, he and his wife, I'm sure. But he's ready for us to work him. Part of the issue also is our filing deadlines, as he mentioned. So he's going to turn this list around because, he's already been working on the list. Mr. Alfred has given us more to add to the list, Mr. Wyatt, and that's separating us internally which work group would do what, so we can get that all out to you to make sure you have the interest, and we've committed to a week to get that done. My only concern is well, not only concern, but major concern that just that legal stuff we have to do to put on these meetings properly for Texas is if we do that the 14th, I think that is going to be too tight, but we can't wait a lot longer, and I completely understand that. But not waiting a lot longer when we have Christmas, which is like right there. Would it be possible? And I may be bumping into someone's vacation if we bump to that first week in January. Is that outrageous? I don't know. I have no life, so I'm not sure.
Keith Ravel, presiding officer. Mary, it would help. What is y'all's vacation schedule over the holidays? We don't want to intrude on.
The state vacation schedule is that we are closed for Christmas and the day after Christmas. I can never remember if we're closed for Christmas Eve. And we're closed. We may be closed for Christmas Eve. I can't remember. And I worked for the state for 20 years, but I know it's Christmas Day after Christmas. And for New Year's, we're closed for New Year's. So we're here somewhere. We're at our house, we're at the office, but we're working remotely and we can do it. Many times we just have advisory board members who have taken a vacation. They don't like to come back immediately after the first because they're out and about with family. So that's really why I'm asking.
Chris?
Since Derek was the one that brought up the concern that it might be too soon on the 14th, Derek, what's your suggestion? How far would you like to?
I think early January would be sufficient. Again, if we need to make the December 14th date work, we can make it happen. But my preference would be for early January.
Okay, I'm looking at the January calendar right now. Realistically, does Monday seem to work best for everybody? Is that a good day? Okay, I would say that, January 4th is the first Monday, and we could schedule it for that if you like. Many people are going to be going back to work. That is their first day back at work, though, after the New Year holiday break. So that would be one thing. I'm getting some thumbs down on that. The following, unless we want to keep it within that week, we would have to go with a Tuesday through Friday date. Following Monday would be the 11th. And we are then almost halfway through January. Kind of unusual circumstances bumping up against the end of the year and everything that is going on.
Presiding officer, is Monday the only date for everyone?
We can go with any date that is acceptable. Yes, Rick Wyatt.
Rick Wyatt, TDLR member. Mondays are, I think, most preferable for most of us. I understand some is not. Question is, what are our requirements for holding meetings? I thought we were supposed to have one at least monthly. What if we go outside a 30-day frame? Are we violating any rules, regulations?
Yes, Derek.
Derek Burkhalter, there is no requirement in the law as to the frequency of meetings, so that we have the discretion to do that. There's no 30-day or monthly requirement.
Okay, looking at another date. If we would go to a Tuesday, again, understanding that that first Monday in January might be rough for a lot of people. Would Tuesday the 5th, Wednesday the 6th, or Thursday the 7th work best for all of you? That gives you 3 days that week. Which would be better, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay, Thursday. Can I see it showing of hands as to who would agree on Thursday, January the 7th?
And you can always, Mary Winston, get Delia to poll if we don't get all the numbers.
Very good. So should we at this time then tentatively set the meeting for Thursday, January 7th, 10 a.m.? Will that work? And Delia, can you poll the members on that? But let's go ahead and at this time then, set it. And Derek, that gives you time to get done the things that you need to get done. And in the meantime, we will get these work groups established and get firing on all cylinders up to that point. So very good.
Keith, just a question. Just because we postponed our meeting until January doesn't mean that we postponed the creation and starting of the work groups, right? So we can still be making progress. We just won't be able to report back until January, which is good.
That is exactly right. And as soon as we get that list and everything else, I will get these groups going and we'll get the work started. And hopefully on that meeting on January 7th, 10 a.m., we'll have some reports that we can bring out. Okay, are there any additional things that need to be discussed at this time? I want to thank everybody. This has been a great meeting, a long meeting, but a good meeting. We accomplished a lot today. And I look forward to seeing you all again in January. I'll be speaking with some of you regarding the work groups. But at this time, unless there are any other comments, announcements, questions, or anything else, we will adjourn our meeting. It is 11:58 a.m. on the 16th of November, and we now adjourn this meeting.